Hi everyone, it's Naomi from the Careers Service here again. Thanks for joining us for another edition of In Conversation With. Today we are talking with Tom Jarvis, a film studies graduate. Tom graduated from what was then Cumbria Institute of the Arts with a BA in film studies before moving to London to start a career in film and TV marketing. Following successful stints at two of the UK's biggest independent distributors and having worked on a hit show, film and franchise movie release, he moved into the world of digital and specifically social media marketing. Firstly, a consultant into the entertainment industry, and more recently as founder and CEO of the award-winning Wilderness Agency, working with some of the world's biggest entertainment and consumer brands. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Naomi. Great to chat to everybody. I'm excited for this.
Glad to have you here. So, did you always want to work in a creative job role?
Yeah, I did. But in truth, I never thought it was possible. I come from a small town in the north of England and didn't know anybody in the creative industries, never met anybody in the creative industries. So coming to Cumbria and studying film was a kind of eye-opener for me. It was the first time in my life, really, that I'd been surrounded by creative people. And that was something I just genuinely loved about my 3 years in Cumbria and studying film, which was just a passion of mine. And the idea that I could spend time looking at the impact of storytelling, I think was just fascinating for me. And I just loved it. And I got the bug for being around creative and brilliant people. And it was, but all the time during that study, I kind of felt like there was a missing piece, which was kind of the business side of film and entertainment. And so that led me to London, and that led me to sort of my career in marketing acquisitions and looking at why and how film and TV and entertainment more generally gets bought and sold, and who makes those decisions, and how do audiences receive the information about those things. I just found was fascinating. So it was. I'd always had a passion for being around creative people and working in a creative area. I just never was really sure about how to do that or the process of getting there. So it was all really new for me.
Excellent. Thanks for that overview. So could you tell me about your career journey so far? We touched on there in the introduction, and you mentioned there moving to London to learn a little bit more about the business side of things. So how has that career journey been, and how did you find out about the world of work in film, TV and media? Was that mainly facilitated by moving to London?
Yes, so I, like most people, when you leave uni, I moved back in with my parents, back just outside of Hull, and applied for an MA in World Cinema at the University of Leeds, which I started and never finished, because during that time I applied for every single film production, distribution, marketing company I could find. I went online in the very early days of online and just contacted as many people as I could. I think somewhere in a drawer, I've still got a stack of rejection letters, which was disheartening at the time. But about 6 months in, I had an email from somebody and an offer to go down to London for an interview, or what I thought was an interview for an internship. It turns out it was just a meeting, and I turned up very formally dressed, and they were all very creative. And I kind of assumed it was going to be an interview, and they just kind of said, "Well, when do you want to start?" I think two of my friends from uni had moved to London at the time, so I didn't really know anybody in the city. I didn't know anything about London, but I said yes, and then I worked jobs back at home in Hull during the weekend to pay for my internship, because at that time it was a very low paid. I think I got my expenses paid for during the week. So to live in London, I couch surfed for 3 months, and every weekend I would travel back and work 2 jobs back in Hull. And I did that for 3 months until finally I was offered a job. So it was a lonely start to the entertainment and creative industry, but was really rewarding, and I think taught me a lot about sort of grit and determination and the need to work really hard in those early days. but also that there were amazing opportunities. The guy who offered me my first job, Tom Clark, is still a friend. He's been a mentor for me for a long time, and I'll always be indebted to him offering me that position, because I don't think I'd ever have got into the creative industries had I not had that opportunity for an internship right off the bat. So yeah, that was the start of the journey.
Wow, yeah, it sounds really intense, but as you say, it's definitely paid off. So that's great. So if we perhaps have some students and soon-to-be graduates listening to this who are thinking of relocating, what advice would you give them based on your own experience?
Do it. Yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of work, but I think one of the things university does for most people in the UK is you've often moved out of home. You've got used to living on your own and being able to manage your money and all of the things that come with that. So ultimately, it's about really where's the opportunity, and if the opportunity is in London or Manchester or even somewhere further afield, I would just say take it, because creative industries, they're small industries, and once you find an opportunity, you quickly build a network, and there is that talk of it's who you know, but I found, and everybody, friends I've graduated with, who I'm still friends with, who are still in the creative industries, and other people I've met in London since, none of us had a network. None of us came from a background of being, parents being in the creative industries or owning companies or anything like that. So we all just built our network as we went. And I think everybody, particularly at that young age in starting junior positions in the creative industries, everybody's doing that. Everybody is looking to build their network. So I'd say do it, graft, work hard. It's tough. And thankfully now entry level positions are a bit better paid and the conditions are better. But use any network you have. Don't be afraid to ask. Be open to new experiences. And then also be aware that everything is a stepping stone. So you're not going to walk into your perfect job. There's going to be parts of that job that are tough. But looking at where this might take you next and thinking about that next step, I think, is a really important thing for anybody. I started out. A lot of what I did was kind of admin work for other people. But getting exposure and being close to people that were making decisions about films and shows that were getting made was really exciting and informative for me. And over time, you start to take on more and more responsibility. So, I would say to anybody, take any opportunity that's there, grab it with 2 hands.
Definitely, yeah, good advice. So fast forward to now, you are founder and CEO of Wilderness Agency, where you work with entertainment and consumer brands. Yeah. Could you talk us through perhaps a typical workday for you and maybe some of the challenges and benefits of working for yourself and starting your own company?
Yeah, the typical workday. I mean, it's obviously changed in the last 12 months. It's a lot of this. Talking to people over calls and online, but genuinely, my role now is, and the agency's changed quite a bit. I kind of look after 3 areas of the business, really. New business, in which we are pitching for new work, so meeting new clients, talking about new projects, being the kind of initial face of the business for lots of new opportunities. So that's really exciting and kind of fast paced, and we're pitching for lots of different things, both in entertainment and, as you mentioned, with consumer brands, marketing and PR. So kind of, again, doing interviews, writing blog posts, supporting our team with research, effectively getting the name of the agency out there. So I work with the team internally on that. And then the other piece is the kind of management structure of the business and overseeing the people that manage the day-to-day operations and work of the business. So I work really closely with 2 of my team, Tilly and Jamie, who are my managing director and our operations director. And they effectively run the kind of day-to-day business. So it's those 3 areas, really. So it's just a mix of, sometimes it'll be people challenges. We've got a team in London and in Amsterdam, so managing people remotely and ensuring work's getting done, and that everyone's healthy and happy. That's a really important part. There's lots of PR and marketing stuff that comes up. So we do interviews and we're writing case studies and blogs and thought pieces. And then new business, which is a kind of ever-going part of what we do. So it's a really broad mix of what I do. And then in terms of challenges, working for yourself or starting your own company is the hardest thing I've ever done outside of being a parent. But the benefits you get is that you get to work with brilliant people that you have a little bit more control, I think, over who you work with and what you do, and you can be more selective. But it does rely on you having that inbuilt network. It's very, very difficult to go out there and do that from a standing start. I mean, it was even difficult for me, and I'd been working for a number of years in that sector. So, but I'd say to any young person leaving uni, like, there is a glamour attached, I think, to entrepreneurship and to starting your own business. I would say get some experience. Working for a big organization taught me a lot that I still find really, really useful today. I learned skills about navigating people, relationships, conflict that I just wouldn't have had if I was working on my own and being quite siloed. So even though now I've built a team of 45 people or so, there is an element still of that sort of entrepreneurship journey, or that startup journey that can be quite lonely and isolating. So I would say for anybody who's starting out, gain some experience, go and work at some big companies. Structure an organization will teach you lots about the things that you like and you don't like, and then of course use your network to go out there and find your own path. But yeah, developing that network is crucial, and I think the best way to do that is to dive in early and work at some great companies and get some experience.
Absolutely, yeah. So do you think, just kind of picking up on that point, that was one of the things that was most useful to you when you were starting out, then being able to fall back on that experience and kind of knowing the industry and knowing your likes and dislikes then?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started the agency, so the agency is 6 years old. In those very early days, all of our new business, all of my contacts, all of the work that I was doing was from existing relationships, people I knew in the film and TV industry. And it's amazing. I think once you've started to build a network, you really see the power of that. Like when I went out, my former boss introduced me to people. I had ex-friends and colleagues that I'd worked with who passed me contact details and introduced me to certain people. So you find that there's a resilience in even though some of those weaker ties that you've built up over the years that really, really help. And that had I not had that, I just don't think we would be where we are now, and I'd be sitting here. So I think it's really important. It's when you're on the outside looking in, you think, how can I ever get into that industry? And then within a few years, I've got friends who work in TV and who are designers and who work in advertising, and they're very closed industries. But once you get some experience, you realize how small they are. And you find that people move from job to job, and people will always give you recommendations. So the creative industries, however disparate it is, whatever part you're in, they do become mini communities, and you do find that lots of the work you get and lots of the opportunities that come to you are from recommendations and from people. So I would say as much as possible, build out that network and lean on it as much as you can, and don't be afraid to ask. You'll be surprised at how the sort of serendipity of opportunities that come from your contacts.
Brilliant. Yeah. So could you talk me through some of your career highlights or career successes then?
Yeah. I guess one when I was working at a company called Entertainment One, who are a big film and TV distribution company, and they just come up off the back of the Twilight franchise. So they'd released that globally, and it had been a huge success. But the pressure was on because we are now looking for the next hit. And I was working with a friend of mine, a a colleague at the time, and we'd had a conversation about a project that we'd heard about from AMC, who were the guys who had made Mad Men, and it was going to be a show called The Walking Dead. It was new, it was just in development, and they were asking for companies to pitch for it to then release it globally around the world. So she came to me and said, look, what should we do? We need to do something unique with this pitch. I don't think just sending them a standard pitch deck is going to work. So because I knew that the show was based on a graphic novel, a very famous graphic novel, we contacted a graphic artist who actually worked with the writer of the original novel based in the UK. And we commissioned him to effectively create our pitch as a graphic novel. And then we sent it to the producers of the show. The guy was on holiday, so we sent it to his hotel, and he called my colleague, who was the kind of lead person on the project, and basically said, look, this is the best pitch I've ever received. I've worked in this industry for more than 20 years, so we'd love to do this. And so we ended up releasing The Walking Dead, and it's now, I think, in 9-10 series in, and still going in a huge TV franchise. So, and one of the things I think that taught me was like, be curious and go beyond. I ended up working on that project after hours. I basically said, look, leave this with me and I'll do it after my day job. So I sat with the graphic artist every night for a week after 6 o'clock, and we basically worked on it sort of in the evenings. But I knew that this was something that if I got it right would be a huge win for everybody, but also for me personally. So yeah, I'd say to anybody, I wouldn't advocate working into the evenings, but what I would say is go beyond what the expectation is. Be curious, like see how far you can stretch things. When I started the agency, we had an opportunity to pitch to 20th Century Fox, which was a huge opportunity for us and was a bit of a game-changing client at the time. And again, we were asked to pitch amongst an array of other agencies, all with more people, with more resources and with more money than us. But we just delved into the brief, and we actually ended up creating our pitch as a kind of map to go alongside the story. And we took everybody through a kind of narrative, which really kind of, it really resonated with the client and with the team, and we won that project. And so again, it was an example of where we'd kind of gone beyond the initial ask, and we'd been more curious. And I think, one of the things I've definitely learned about setting up an agency is it's super competitive, as is all of the creative industries. So if you're going to do something, really care about it, because giving more of a damn than someone else might be the difference between you getting an opportunity and you not getting an opportunity. So they're just two things that kind of initially kind of spring to mind, really.
Wow, yeah, no, that's really interesting. And what an opportunity to be able to kind of have such a role in such a big franchise as well. That's great.
Yeah.
So if we have anyone listening who is maybe unsure about their career path, maybe they are about to graduate in an arts or design degree, and they're not quite sure about what they want to do, what tips would you give them? What would you say to them?
If you're a designer, I think you're in a good place, because I think that's a skill set that's only going to become more important. So what advice would I give? I think don't rush would be one. I think for most people working in some kind of creative endeavor, it's not a straight line. People talk about sort of squiggly career paths, and I think that's true. Most of the people I know that have seen any sort of relative success in their careers, it's never been a straight line. I've got friends who are artists and great, very successful in corporate world, and none of that has been straight. The thing they started out doing is potentially not the thing that they've ended up becoming really well known for. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to experiment. I know I've said this already, but build a network. It genuinely is the most important thing. Your weak ties are sometimes the most important. So friends of friends, somebody that you might have worked with, someone that in a few years' time you might have remembered from uni. Some of those contacts have become my best friends and most important collaborators. So build your network and then find the area that you're really good at. And it's not necessarily the one of the things I really love is pitching. I love the competition. I love the sort of theatre and the drama of it. That's something that I was never taught at uni, and that it isn't the most creative naturally. But for me, it's something that I find really rewarding. So find the things that you really like to do and try and do as much of them as possible. But yeah, don't rush. I mean, if you're leaving uni, you've got time. I would just say be open to different opportunities and experiences. And as you're doing that, try and build as much of a network as possible, and then lean on that network throughout different times. Don't be afraid to ask. You'd be surprised at how open people are.
Definitely, and I think that's a really good point. Sometimes we can feel this huge pressure when we finish university that we have to have our career path chosen and we have to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives. And, as you've pointed out, things can be a little bit more squiggly than that. And so I think it's really good to kind of hear that and know that, we sometimes don't need to feel that much pressure to have it all figured out, as soon as we've kind of graduated. So, yeah.
No, I mean, I think the people that think they have are probably the ones that are now rethinking, at my age in sort of your mid-30s, are sort of rethinking their path. Mm-hmm. And those that have come to things slightly more slowly are really just starting to blossom and be super excited about the things that they're doing and the opportunities that they're now getting. But they do it having a broader range of experiences and with a broader set of network. I think especially now, we're in a world where people are changing jobs much more regularly, and that's not a bad thing. That we look at people who've moved jobs and actually sometimes see that as a positive, because it means that they didn't want to stay stagnant somewhere and that they've been proactive to make that move, and they're ambitious. So I would just say, be conscious that you might have, within your wider career, you might have 2 or 3 mini careers. You might have a set of jobs that are around one area, and then that might navigate and shift, particularly as things, technology is changing so quickly, and the needs of what people want is rapidly changing. So you might go into design, and then you might end up doing product design, or you might end up doing something slightly more non-traditional. So I would just say be open to that. Be open to the idea that things shift and that you might not. It's not one career. It might be 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a journey out there. Definitely. So that's everything from me then. Thank you very much for joining us, Tom. I'm sure this episode will be really useful for our students. I'm sure it's something that they'll really appreciate you having taken the time to come and share with us.
No worries. Thank you, Naomi. It was great to chat.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.